Freedom is one of the best gifts that a generation of Filipino can give to the next generation. We as soldiers have fought for freedom for centuries in order to defend our country and our people. Our military history is therefore a history of the struggle for freedom. In this lesson, we seek to reconnect you with the heroes of the past in order that you may see the importance of your role as the new hero of our generation, whose aim is to fight for freedom of our country and our countrymen. This lesson seeks to inspire you in your role as a protector of our nation and as a defender of its freedoms, in order that you may fully internalize the value of your current job.
Can you still recall the different Philippine military campaigns discussed in your previous military schoolings? Training objective: to familiarize students on the famous military heroes, their background, works, and legacies. The scope of the lesson is as follows: Alexander the Great, Augustus, Genghis Khan, Napoleon Bonaparte, Bernard Montgomery. This lesson will show you how every nation's doctrines, strategy, and tactics were formed in response to the changing world, or how warfare shaped our world today. Alexander the Great. Let us talk about Alexander the Great, who reigned between 356 to 323 BCE, before Christ era, in Macedonia, Greece. Alexander the Great was born in Pelia, Macedonia. His parents were Philip of Macedon and Olympias. His boyhood was in part influenced by two people outside of his family. First was Leonidas, a very efficient teacher but a stern disciplinarian, who subjected Alexander into an almost Spartan regimen. When he was 13, he began to undergo his education under the great philosopher Aristotle. The early training under Leonidas had made him into a lean and hard athlete, and Aristotle had molded him into a keen and inquisitive student, preparing him to assist his father in managing their kingdom. From the brief narrative of Alexander's background, it was obvious that he was a product of many experiences. After he had settled his kingdom and establishes his authority in Greece, Alexander was all set to realize his father's dream. It started with the conquest of Persia, which is known as the Battle of Granicus. In the Battle of Granicus, Macedonians defeated the Persians. Fought on May 334 BC between 35,000 Macedonians under Alexander the Great and 40,000 Persians and Greek mercenaries under Darius and various Persian satraps. Alexander crossed the Granicus to face the Persian army, leading the way himself at the head of the heavy cavalry in battle formation, and having dispersed the Persian light horse, he brought up the phalanx, which fell upon and routed the Greek mercenaries. Shown is the battle plan of the Macedonians. The Persians lost heavily, while the Macedonians' loss was very slight.
Alexander led an army of 40,000 across the Hellespont, now the Dardanelles Strait, and began to war against Persia. In the battles at the river Granicus and the city of Issus, the army of Persian King Darius III was defeated. The Persians lost their entire fleet of ships and surrendered the Mediterranean Sea to the Macedonians.
In the Battle of Issus, Macedonians defeated the Persians. Fought 333 BC between 35,000 Macedonians under Alexander the Great and a vast horde of Asiatics with 30,000 Greek mercenaries under Darius, king of Persia. The Persians were drawn up on the right bank of the Pinatas, which crosses the plain of Issus. Alexander led his heavy cavalry to attack on the left, crossing the river and routing the Persian cavalry. The phalanx in the center was opposed to the Greek mercenaries, and after heavy fighting, the Macedonians made good their footing on the right bank. Alexander, meanwhile, led his squadrons against the bodyguard of Darius, who fled from the field, followed by the whole of the Asiatics, and the victory was complete. Observe the illustration. Between the two battle formation, which is more stable and difficult to penetrate? The Macedonian battle formation is more stable and difficult to penetrate than the Persian battle formation.
The Battle of Issus changed the course of history. Along this stretch of river, how was Alexander able to defeat a force so much larger than his own? Having brought an army to the site of battle, the key to success often lay in the manner in which the troops were deployed. Darius felt confident in his numerical superiority. He established his infantry in a defensive position on the edge of the steeply banked river, then massed virtually all of his 10,000 cavalry by the sea. This cavalry was to launch an all-out strike across the shallow river mouth and encircle the Macedonians from behind.
Siege of Tyre, Macedonians defeated Tyre. The city of Tyre was a strongly fortified city built on an island separated from the mainland by a channel 1,000 yards wide, was besieged by the Macedonians under Alexander the Great. In 332 BC, Alexander at once commenced the construction of a mole across the channel, but was much hampered by the Phoenician galleys which issued from the two fortified harbors and his military engines. He then collected in Sidon a fleet of 250 ships from the captured Phoenician cities, and holding the Tyrian galleys in check completed his mole. It was some time, however, before a breach could be effected, but in August 332, an assault was delivered, headed by Alexander in person, and the city was stormed and taken. 8,000 Tyrians fell in the storm, and about 30,000 were sold into slavery. The Siege of Gaza, Macedonians defeated Persians. This city, defended by a Persian garrison under Batis, was besieged by Alexander the Great on October 332 BC. Utilizing the engines he had employed against Tyre, he succeeded after some weeks in breaching the walls. After 3 unsuccessful assaults, carried the city by storm, the garrison being put to the sword. Shown is the location of Gaza. It is near Tyre and Alexandria. The Battle of Gaugamela, Macedonians defeated the Persians. Fought October 1, 331 BCE, between 47,000 Macedonians under Alexander the Great and the Persian army, 3 or 4 times as numerous under Darius.
October 1st, 331 BC, near the village of Gaugamela, the two most powerful armies in the world, the Persians and Macedonians, are about to clash. The Macedonian army moves first, even though they are outnumbered 5 to 1. Their young leader, Alexander, orders his elite troops to attack the center of the Persian line. At dawn, on the morning of October 1st, 331 BC, the phalanx began to form on the battlefield at Gaugamela. With the armies in place, the battle lines at Gaugamela have now been drawn. The modern military terms mean that the Macedonian phalanx were arrayed at an angle, with the left side facing outward away from the battle, expecting an attack from the side. And the echelon, or angled line of attack, couldn't help but confuse the enemy, who had never seen such an approach to battle before. The Macedonian front line begins to march toward the enemy. On the front line of the Persian force are the Immortals, Darius's elite guard. As the Macedonians get closer, Darius believes Alexander's angled approach has given the Persians an enormous advantage. Darius sees the open ground between the Persian cavalry and Alexander's troops. Darius orders his cavalry to charge the Macedonian left. The Macedonian left flank is under the command of Parmenio. He awaits the charge, knowing that his task is to keep the Persian line engaged. And on the other side of the Macedonian line, the young king does something completely unexpected. He turns his cavalry to the right. As the center and right clash, Alexander and his companion cavalry continue to ride to the right, while the Persian cavalry matches their every move. But Alexander has a hidden advantage. Running on foot between the horses of the cavalry is a complete regiment of peltasts, Alexander's light infantry. Alexander's unorthodox approach to the battle has thrown the Persian army into disarray and has opened a gap in their line. In an amazing move, Alexander turns his entire cavalry 160 degrees and charges toward the gap in the Persian line. The hidden peltasts now emerge and attack the Persian horsemen in a hail of slings, javelins, and arrows, preventing the Persian horsemen from pursuing Alexander and his cavalry. The phalanx is the anvil. The cavalry is now the hammer. The Persian infantry is smashed between them. The Macedonian phalanx find no resistance. They charge forward. The Persian army breaks and begins to run. With the Persian center broken, Alexander has one goal now, the most ancient goal of all warfare: kill the king.
Alexander, who led the Macedonian right wing, forced a passage between the Persian left and center and attacked the center on the flank. After a stubborn resistance, the Persians gave way, and Darius, taking to flight, the whole army fled in confusion and was routed with enormous loss, especially at the passage of the Lycus, which barred their retreat. Alexander had won the day at Gaugamela through courage, insight, and bravery. Although he fought many battles in his long career, most historians agree that this was his best. This victory made Alexander master of Asia. Shown is the Macedonian Empire after the Battle of Arabella. Battle of the Hydaspes Macedonians defeated the Indians. Fought BC 327 between 65,000 Macedonians, 70,000 Asiatics under Alexander the Great and the army of the Indian king Porus, numbering 30,000 infantry with 200 elephants and 300 war chariots. Alexander crossed the river a few miles above Porus' entrenchments and utterly routed him with a loss of 12,000 killed and 9,000 prisoners, including Porus himself. The Macedonians lost 1,000 only. The capture of Persian cities. The cities of Susa and Persepolis produced Alexander vast treasures of gold and silver. Inhabitants of these cities were either killed or sold to slavery. He burned Persepolis in revenge for burning Athens in 480 BC, Zing the Zagros mountains into Media. Darius was killed by his own people. His death left Alexander the king of Asia. He continued his conquest to the following places: southern shore of Caspian Sea, south of Arachosia, southeast Persia, Afghanistan, Hindu Kush mountain range, Jahartes River. He then later married Roxanne, daughter of Sojan Baron. Shown is a map of Alexander's conquest. At the height of his power, his territory stretched from the Ionian Sea to northern India. He planned to make Asia and Europe one country. He chose Babylon as his city. To achieve his goal to expand his territory, Alexander encouraged intermarriages. He placed soldiers from all the provinces in his army. He introduced a uniform currency system throughout the empire. He promoted trade and commerce. He encouraged the spread of Greek ideas, customs, and laws in Asia. He replaced any provincial officials whom he heard ruling unjustly. Alexander has vast plans including governmental reorganization and expedition in Arabia, but was seriously ill with malaria at Babylon. He died on June 13, 323 BC. His body was placed in a gold coffin and taken to Memphis, Egypt. It was later carried to Alexandria. His only son, Alexander IV, was born after Alexander's death. This resulted to a fight among his leading generals to become governors of various areas. They fought for the control of the empire. In 311 BC, the empire was split into independent states or monarchies. His conquests and achievements made him the greatest conqueror of history. Augustus. After Alexander the Great, let us now go to the period 27 BC to 14 AD during Augustus's time in Rome. His full name was Imperator Caesar Divi Filius Augustus. He was born on September 23, 63 BC in Rome. His father was Gaius Octavius and his mother was Atia Balba Caesonia. He wanted Victorious Commander to be his first name because he wanted the very idea of victory be associated with him. He also promoted the idea of a superior Roman civilization with a task of ruling the world embodied in the phrase Tu regere imperio populus, which means, Roman, remember by your strength to rule the earth's peoples. This can be explained from the time Rome was founded as a republic. It demonstrated an uncanny ability to wage war for political purposes. At that time, the political situation in Rome required a leader to have both the military backing and large financial reserve. These two elements are necessary to obtain a political seat. At the age 13, Augustus already boasted 21 occasions of successful battles. His successes earned him the title Imperator from his troops. Augustus was one ambitious man. He conquered the following: Hispania, modern Spain and Portugal, Alpine regions of Rhaetia and Noricum, modern Switzerland and Bavaria, Illyricum and Pannonia, modern Albania, Croatia, Hungary, and Serbia, Africa province, Galatia, modern Turkey. Let us trace one by one on the map the different places he conquered. Our next military hero is Genghis Khan, who lived between 1155 to 1167. His real name was Genghis Khan, but is more popularly known as Genghis Khan, meaning universal ruler. He was born 1155 near Lake Baikal in Mongolia. Under his command, he accomplished the following: unite the Mongol tribes, defeated the Chinese states of Xia, conquered much of the Jin Empire, destroyed the Persian state of Khwarezm, pushed Mongolian power to Novgorod, Russia, created the largest empire ever to exist. Shown is the map of all the significant conquests and movements of Genghis Khan and his generals. To summarize the routes of his battles, let us trace it one by one. Genghis Khan was always associated with terrible tales of conquest, destruction, and bloodshed. This famed clan leader and his immediate successors created the largest empire ever to exist, spanning the entire Asian continent from the Pacific Ocean to modern-day Hungary in Europe. Such an empire could not have been shaped without visionary leadership, superior organizational skills, the swiftness and most resilient cavalry ever known, an army of superb archers, the Devil's Horsemen in Western sources, the existence of politically weakened states across Asia, and of course, havoc and devastation. Assessment of his rule. Mongols traditionally revered him as the father of their nation. He introduced a script for writing the Mongol language, promulgated a harsh but fair code of law over his domain, emphasized religious tolerance, tax policies, and unparalleled free trade zone. Legacies. Cultural development, artistic achievement, a courtly way of life, and an entire continent united under the so-called Pax Mongolica, Mongolian peace. Yuan dynasty in China, 1279 to 1368. Transformation from purely nomadic tribal people into rulers of cities and states. Adopted the system of administration of conquered states. This map shows how large the Mongol Empire was in 1227. Today, he is highly regarded as their father. His statue stands in front of the government building in Sukbatar Square in Ulaanbaatar, Mongolia. From Mongolia, let's transfer to France between the year 1769 to 1821. Born 15 August 1769 in Corsica. Education, military school, one of the greatest military leaders in history, and Emperor of France. He conquered much of Europe. Legacies. Introduced the concept of the modern professional conscript army to Europe. Introduced new concepts into the French military system. Corps replaced divisions as the largest army units, artillery was integrated into reserve batteries, the staff system became more fluid, and cavalry once again became a crucial formation in French military doctrine. Napoleon's biggest influence in the military sphere was in the conduct of warfare. Operational strategy underwent massive restructuring. Napoleonic warfare, Napoleonic Code, revolutionary project spurred the development of bourgeois society in Germany by expanding the right to own property and breaking the back of feudalism. A page from the Napoleonic Code. Bernard Law Montgomery. Our final destination is the United Kingdom between the year 1887 to 1946. One of the most famous military hero in this place is Field Marshal Bernard Law Montgomery. Born 17th November 1887, London. Education, St. Paul's School and RMAS. Regiment, Royal Warwickshire Regiment. Served in India before going to France at the beginning of the First World War. In the Second World War, he was sent to France with the British Expeditionary Force. Places where his battles launched 1,000 ships. India, Palestine, France, El Alamein. Operation Lightfoot, Operation Supercharge. Tripoli, Invasion of Italy, Operation Overlord, D-Day Invasion. Operation Market Garden. The combined ground and airborne attack was designed to gain crossings over the large Dutch rivers, the Maas, Waal, and Nether Rhine to aid the armored advance of the British Second Army. After the failure of Operation Market Garden, Montgomery began to question the strategy adopted by Eisenhower. As a result of comments made at a press conference he gave on 7 January 1945, he was severely rebuked by Winston Churchill and General Alan Brooke, the head of the British Army. Achievements. Well known for his battle in Alamein. 1946, Montgomery was granted a peerage and he took the title Viscount Montgomery of Alamein. Served under General Dwight Eisenhower as Deputy Supreme Commander of the Allied Forces in Europe. This picture is just one of the scenarios during the battle in Alamein. Principles in battle. Air battle must win before fighting land and sea battle. Army plus air has to be so knitted together to form one entity, the Air Force Command. He said that we do not understand the meaning of Army cooperation. When you are one entity, you cannot cooperate. If you knit together the power of the Army on the land and the power of the air in the sky, then nothing will stand against you and you will never lose a battle.